There's a pocket full of Spongebob episodes that people just refuse to talk about or skip completely, often because these episodes can make them uncomfortable. This video isn't so much about a Spongy episode that's outright bad. I can generally watch a bad Spongebob episode, but these are a combination of the uncomfortable episodes that I tend to skip when rewatching the series, or my community skips, because of that deeply uncomfortable feeling they give us. I want to talk about these episodes because it's my personal policy that uncomfortable topics should not be off limits for talking about. If a topic's uncomfortable, I think we can make it less uncomfortable by talking about it, bringing it into the light. Because by bringing these topics into the light and talking about them, we make them more comfortable. It can help us better understand these topics and sometimes ourselves. So if I don't want to discuss these episodes, that's all the better reason to discuss them with you. Let's begin.
Have you ever noticed salt shakers?
That's no lady. It's a shame I always skip this episode because I've always remembered the get out of town joke as a kid, and I still think it's really funny.
Get out of town! Get out of town!
If you don't remember, Patrick disguises himself as a woman because he thinks he's in danger, because someone tells him, get out of town. As a result, Patrick works at the Krusty Krab in disguise, and Squidward and Krabs are just falling all over him. You see, there was this old cliche in the 90s and 2000s that mostly applied to heterosexual men and women. The cliche that heterosexual men would do anything for an attractive woman. In the shows, the men would basically just become zombies who say yes to anything the woman asks.
Hi. Again.
Hi.
Hi. Hi.
Hi.
Honestly, I've always hated this cliche so much because it simplifies these men down into being just helplessly manipulated by attractive women. It takes away their personality and who they are.
So, are you free this Saturday night?
No.
And it simplifies those women down into looking manipulative and taking advantage of men. It's a simplistic, dumb cliche that paints these guys as desperate for female attention. But real human beings are so much more complicated than that. And this is the tired cliche that Krabs and Squidward do when meeting Patricia, Patrick's new female name.
Patricia. The most beautiful sound I've ever seen.
And this whole episode is just repeating this uncomfortable, dumb cliche.
How about Sunday brunch?
But I should make it very clear, I obviously don't mind Patrick dressing up as a woman. I'd actually find it a fascinating character twist if Patrick was finding his new identity as a woman. That'd be like more character development in one episode than we saw in the entire series of The Patrick Show. But it's not about Patrick exploring his identity as a woman. It's instead just about endlessly repeating this uncomfortable cliche that heterosexual guys fall all over themselves for the attention of ladies they find attractive. Though I suppose it is better than guys being mean to women they find attractive.
Get him away from me.
That means he likes you.
See, this is why I don't ever talk about this episode. It gets me thinking on uncomfortable real-world topics of how people can be treated because of how attractive they look. But honestly, I do feel a little better just finally talking to you about this episode. Let's talk about Grandma's Kisses. This is an episode that both me and my community don't like discussing, or they just find it uncomfortable. But why is it uncomfortable to us? I really thought about this episode a lot, and I think for a lot of SpongeBob fans, Grandma's Kisses taps into something many adult cartoon fans are uncomfortably familiar with, being mocked for behaving what was traditionally seen as more childish, or for liking more quote-unquote childish things. If you need a quick refresher on the story, SpongeBob still gets kissed by his grandma, and really likes to spend a lot of time with his grandma. And for some reason, Squidward and a bunch of people in Bikini Bottom seem to find this the most fascinating thing in the world.
They're laughing at you, not with you.
And they just relentlessly mock SpongeBob. Seriously, do these people have no life? I only recall talking about this episode once about 8 or 9 years ago. And I previously said, ooh, he's got a good relationship with his family, let's shame him. One commenter pointed out what really upset them was SpongeBob's meltdown at the end, because it reminded them too much of their own neurodivergent challenges in the past. Maybe they had a similar meltdown and it was a traumatic experience for them. To quote the comment directly, I know SpongeBob's meltdown probably hits way too deep emotionally for a lot of people on an uncomfortable level. And the replies really agreed. Some people found the meltdown scene quote-unquote stings their soul, or even made them cry. And yeah, I had meltdowns as well in the past when I was a kid. And I always skipped the meltdown scene, I guess partially for that reason. So yeah, between the relentless bullying SpongeBob receives and him finally cracking, and striking some of our insecurities about also liking more traditionally childish stuff, It's really no wonder some of us tend to find this an uncomfortable episode we tend to skip. Fortunately, the movie later came in and freaking owned liking childish stuff. Goofy goobers for life, man.
I'm a goofy goober! You're a goofy goober!
As Spongy's grandma says, that doesn't make him any less of an adult. You be you and do what makes you happy. But I do completely understand this episode triggering some old anxieties and making people uncomfortable. And then we have Ink Lemonade. Both me and my community tend to skip this one, and I really don't like talking about it. And for me personally, it's not even the stupid concept that has me skip this one. See, I find it strangely gross how Squidward is shooting his, ink. There's just something so ew about it. How can I put it in a safe for work way?
Oh God, I'm so sorry. That's never happened to me before. It's just, you're so attractive and it's been a while.
I don't like discussing Ink Lemonade because it actually grosses me out more than the splinter for kind of awkward reasons. Oh, I know, the Goop clip will demonstrate my point in a safe for work way. The community summed up them skipping the episode in one of the top comments.
Oh, isn't it still work? Alright, I'll do it. Ink Lemonade. Nuff said. Yeah.
I mean, clearly the community disliked discussing it so much that they didn't even discuss their reason. Even the episode structure itself is basically the equivalent to a 9-year-old schoolboy on a school bus trying to gross out the girls. In this case though, if you've somehow forgotten, I wish I could, SpongeBob and Patrick are trying to scare Squidward in order to get him to give them more ink. Because apparently his ink makes great lemonade.
I'm gonna go.
Again, I just don't think there's any artistic merit to discussing this one. Unlike the Splinter, there isn't even some clever jokes on the side, it's just repeatedly showing off Squidward's bodily fluids. Yeah.
You know, some people say that's good for your hair.
Yeah, thanks.
Next up we have the Splinter. This was recommended a lot by the community. And yeah, it's a fair choice for an episode to skip. Would you believe though, I never skipped this one. And obviously I'm happy to talk about the Splinter here as I've reviewed the episode multiple times. I think that's because besides the gross out of the Splinter, there's actually some pretty funny moments in here. I love some of the animation jokes at the start particularly. I like the buns joke. I laugh at the stuck joke.
This thing is stuck pretty good.
And I adore the fact that Squidward leaves a note for Spongy that he ends with, "Love Squidward."
Oh, love you too, Squiddy.
It's just this quiet, weirdly affectionate moment between these two, and I love it. But that was just the first 2 minutes, and after that it really goes downhill. But I always have this morbid sense of curiosity as this train wreck unfolds. I look on in shock and awe. Each time it's like I desperately want to understand the episode better, and what the writers were thinking. I cringe and squirm when I see Spongy trying to remove his splinter at the start. And I do admit I skip Patrick trying to treat the splinter at the 9-minute mark. But you know, it's not a total wreck. Some moments are fun. But I'll keep this one short as you probably know this season 6 episode backwards by now anyway. And I just don't think there's much artistic merit to this episode beyond teaching kids what not to do when you get a splinter. Party pooper pants. Well, I'm really glad for that pop filter right now. Party pooper pants. I think only one person recommended this one, but I also skip it, so I mentioned it. Why? I think harsh memories of social anxiety. SpongeBob hosts a party and he is ridiculously structured about it.
Making light conversation with Mr. Krabs from 10:41 to 10:47.
It's kind of an autistic moment for our good Sponge buddy. He keeps nearly ruining the party until he's accidentally booted out of the house. And then the party really starts when he's gone. Something about SpongeBob repeatedly sabotaging a party going well just takes me back to an anxious place as a teenager. I guess because I've always socially struggled with parties, if I was even lucky enough to get invited to one at all. And everything SpongeBob's doing is so socially inappropriate for a party that it hurts my soul. He's clearly wrecking his own party and it's just painful and anxiety-inducing to watch. It's going fine, dude. Quit sabotaging the decent moments in your life. So yeah, a personal choice because there was a lot of anxiety projection from me on this one. Yes, then we have Wormy. In case you know why this episode's uncomfortable, don't worry, I blurred the footage. Because there was so many suggestions in my community that they avoid ever watching this Wormy episode.
I never want to watch the Wormy episode again. Anyone who has seen it knows why.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious. It's a horsefly. Wormy is the reason I'm terrified of butterflies to this day. Wormy, I avoid it like the plague.
My childhood memories prevent me from watching Wormy for obvious reasons.
The episode shocked a lot of people growing up because in SpongeBob's typical fashion, they inserted some random live-action footage. When SpongeBob sees Wormy the butterfly close up, instead of him seeing a butterfly, they instead show a horsefly up close. Not that butterflies are particularly nice close up either, but ugh. The whole town of Bikini Bottom is as terrified as we were as kids. And the whole episode is basically running from the butterfly until Sandy saves the day at the end.
That ought to hold you, little guy.
It's a waste that this episode isn't enjoyed by many people because of that one bit of footage, because it's really funny. But goodness jeebus, no one wanted to see that 3 seconds of horsefly footage again. And yeah, it's gross. Flies are a major nuisance in my country, Australia, and they willingly give up their life if they dare enter my villa. More smart, more safe, more tea. But on the plus side, after this episode aired in 2001, I finally stopped hearing people say how quote-unquote beautiful butterflies were. As I said, I really don't think they're that pretty. They're glorified colourful moths anyway.
I get to play with the Patty Pal today.
You can't take it!
Ah yes, yours, mine, and mine. This is an episode that I avoid, but also one of the most suggested episodes that my community avoids. I had a similar experience myself to one of the top commenters. This episode made child me realize, maybe the media I consume can be considered bad sometimes. And I do still remember feeling uncomfortable watching this episode as a kid, because it really does a good job establishing the kind of inconsiderate person that Patrick is. Patrick is the unpleasant combination of being both unintelligent and self-absorbed. But in this case, I do believe there's some artistic value to this episode. I think Yours, Mine, and Mine works as a teaching tool for kids to know how not to treat another friend. Because as a kid, I empathized with SpongeBob the whole way. I thought at the time, gee, I never want to treat another friend this way. It's a bit like Mr. Bean, which had the unintended effect of teaching many kids on the spectrum what are socially inappropriate things to do. But I can't deny, I completely skip watching this Patrick episode every run through of the show, because it just reminds me how much I dislike Patrick. And I've been trying hard to learn to tolerate Patrick for the last 25 years because he stubbornly stayed in SpongeBob's every adventure without fail. We just can't escape this pink dunderhead. It's honestly a real bummer that the Sandy movie was so poorly written. It was 100% an adventure without Patrick. Maybe if the film had been better received, we might have got more adventures with these two in the future. I'm not trying to ship the two, I'd take Squidward too. Give me more adventures with Squidward and Sandy with SpongeBob, not the pink lunkhead. Anyway, tangent aside. See, this is why I don't watch this episode. It just makes me not want to see Patrick ever again, even more than I already don't. And someday I must learn to tolerate him. Oh yeah, then there's Stuck in the Ringer, a heavily recommended choice. This comment also recommended another episode, which we will discuss in more detail shortly. But I think The Ringer is skipped by many people because it puts people in a kind of sad state.
I can't even eat ice cream now! This dumb ringer's in the way!
Like, if someone's got basic empathy and mirror neurons, there's a good chance them watching SpongeBob so deeply uncomfortable stuck in this ringer might make them feel a little uncomfortable too.
Crying never solves anything.
Patrick's the main problem of this episode, and given Patrick is now the star of his own show and a big player in many recent seasons, many people are really trying hard to not hate Patrick. And nothing will get you disliking Patrick quicker than Stuck in the Ringer or Yours, Mine, and Mine. Maybe Pet Sitter Pat, that was pretty bad too. And the Patrick Show has his moments too. Anyway. And now a choice from me. Nasty Patty. No one suggested this one. Personal choice. I'm not saying this is technically a bad episode by any means, but I skip this one every time I'm going through season 3. Why? Well, it forces SpongeBob to assist through tears what he thinks is a murder. I'm sure you haven't forgotten, but the story is SpongeBob and Krabs give a bad burger to a health inspector and they think he dies afterwards.
We killed the health inspector!
So Krabs forces SpongeBob along to help bury the body, continually pushing SpongeBob to help him destroy the evidence.
Now get digging!
Yes, sir.
And understandably, SpongeBob is deeply uncomfortable and upset through the whole thing. And I just don't enjoy seeing Spongy this upset. This is traumatizing for the kid. And frankly, I don't like seeing Krabs being this level of awful.
What are we gonna do?
What's this wee stuff? You fed him the tainted patty.
But you told me to give it to him.
Well, you could have talked me out of it.
Krabs is so unlikable in this episode that it's harder to get on board with him for the rest of the series if I watch it. I'm hesitant to use this term, but what Krabs is doing to SpongeBob here almost feels like coercive control.
Join me, boy, or you're fired.
He's misleading him in order to get him to do the things he wants.
That's no good.
But I don't like to use that term lightly, and if you disagree, I totally understand. But I just don't know what else to call SpongeBob being arm twisted into burying a body. It's just so uncomfortable the whole way through. SpongeBob's anxiety is so evident that it's almost catchy. And Krabs' paranoia is unsettling.
It'll be the end of you, it'll be the end of me, and worst of all, it'll be the end of me.
It helps sugar the pill a little bit that the health inspector is alive at the end. It doesn't help that they thought he was dead and this is what they would do. Oh wait, I think I've got it. It's not about the uncomfortable topic. It's about how my friend Spongy acts in the face of this uncomfortable topic. The reason I don't like watching this old episode is it feels out of character for the SpongeBob I know.
It doesn't seem right. But it feels so good.
It reminds me of Milgram's experiment, where 65% of participants delivered a deadly shock of 450 volts to a person because they were told to by an authority figure. It's such a messed up experiment, and I wanted to think SpongeBob was one of the 35% who wouldn't kill a person because someone told him to. I remember that experiment from like 2015, and I'll just never see a lot of people the same way again after that. It just breaks my heart to think the SpongeBob is so spineless that he'd cow down to helping with a murder. I think that is the true personal reason I never watched this episode. Oh, well, I feel better. Let's move on. The Nitwitting and Trenchbillies. I combine these two together because they're suggested by the community for similar reasons. And I heartily understand why we don't talk about either. I skipped the Nitwitting episode because it's just all about the gross out. Similar to Squid Ink, the goal seems to be purely to make the schoolboys laugh and everyone else gag. Characters drink bodily fluids, brains are taken out, people make stupid faces and gargle like idiots. I've blurred the drool footage, as it literally makes me gag every time I see it. Though I do like the ending touch that Sandy and her team come in to clean the mess of the nitwits every time.
Our civic duty is repairing the mayhem that the empty heads cause every month.
I procrastinated watching Trenchbillies too because it's just so ugly in basically every way possible. It's ugly to talk about, it's ugly to look at, and it's just an unpleasant time overall. The look of the hillbillies particularly, it's just always stood out to me as not looking like it belongs in Bikini Bottom. The way they're animated has this kind of animosity to it. It feels like the kind of animation you'd see in an old racist Bugs Bunny short. Why would you choose to draw characters without pupils? They're not drawn with any humanity. They're more like a horde of mindless zombies. And that's the other ugly part to me. The old hillbillies are overcrowded families of idiots shtick got old to me by the time I was 8.
Kira, Ian, Lauren, Hubert.
Princess Carolyn was raised in a quote-unquote hillbilly family. That doesn't mean her family wasn't made up of real people. Both these episodes have one boring shtick. They're ugly to look at, and they're ugly even to think about. The Nitwitting and Trenchbillies fit this list to a T, because I don't want to talk about them, and my community doesn't want to either. Now let's go through some quick honorable mentions that the community suggested, but I was running over time, so I'll just run through them quickly. A flea in her dome. Obvious choice. It's uncomfortable because the flea is gross and we get close-ups of it gnawing at everyone's skin. Who wants to see that? The whole episode is basically watching everyone in Sandy's tree dome in miserable pain for 10 minutes. So of course people would skip it. Fleas are gross and horrible and you have every right to skip this one. Here's an odd one. The Memoriam ending for Karate Island. Power of Friendship 2.0 suggested this one, and I think their comment sums it up well, so I'll just read it to you verbatim. That grainy, black and white picture of Pat Morita, who is the voice of Master Udon, used to freak me out as a kid. Now, growing up, realizing that this is Mr. Miyagi, of all people, and I regret being scared. So yeah, rest in peace, Sensei. You'll be waxing on and waxing off in our hearts. Squid Bob Tentacle Pants. The community suggested this one a few times. It seems body horror just isn't a favorite topic in cartoons. And again, I get where people are coming from. The ending scene particularly is among the worst scenes in all of SpongeBob history.
It all started when I was born.
It's pure shock value. But Patrick Smartpants is actually quite an interesting episode for better understanding Patrick, so it's a shame it got lumped in with Squidbob. The next suggestion was one that surprised me. Have you seen this snail? This was one of the highest voted suggestions, and yeah, I was surprised. I think many people are split on this one's value. Because it's sad, but it's also very real and relatable. Gary runs away after Spongy forgets to feed him, which causes Spongy to go on a desperate search for him, and he gets very sad without him.
Gary!
I do also tend to skip this episode because it's sad, though I certainly recognize its value. The top comment on this episode made sense to me. As an adult, I'm sensitive to any sort of pet loss, so I still cry whenever the Gary Come Home song comes on. SpongeBob's bad habit. I mean, who wouldn't be a little uncomfortable with this episode? It's almost exclusively about watching SpongeBob bite his nails while his friends try and stop it. If you don't bite your nails, it's gross to watch. If you do bite your nails, it's even more uncomfortable to watch. House Fancy. This was also recommended a lot. And it's funny because House Fancy is overall a fine episode. It's about Squidward trying to impress his arch-rival Squilliam with his not-as-fancy house.
The same. You wouldn't happen to be watching House Fancy, would you?
There's nothing wrong with it except for one moment. And boy, is it a cringe moment. I yelped out loud the first time I saw this. And there's a very good chance you've also gone through the insufferable torment of stubbing your toe before. And ripping? Well, even beginning to discuss this is probably making you cringe a little. I know I am, so yeah, enough said. A pal for Gary. This is more a worst episode to me than an uncomfortable episode, but it got a lot of recommendations for how uncomfortable it is to watch this monster chase Gary. People get uncomfortable seeing Gary suffer this much, so they give the episode a skip. As many people are pet owners, and they can empathize a lot with pets being mistreated. The commenter who suggested the episode said it made them feel horrified, which I totally get. But personally, I don't skip a pal for Gary because, like the Splinter, I am just fascinated at all the terrible decisions. It's like, wow, what were they thinking?
You put Fluffy down right now! Bad boy Gary!
What were they thinking?
Fungus Among Us. This one is skipped by many, but I do think it serves its purpose in teaching people how easily germs can spread. It may be gross, but we can visibly see SpongeBob spread fungus to other customers in the Krusty Krab. And it takes Gary coming in to eat the fungus to save the day. A mighty good reason to keep a sea snail about. Spongehenge. At first, this suggestion struck me as an odd choice for an episode to skip. But some people seem to dislike the idea that no one looked for SpongeBob and he was slowly driven mad for decades.
I'm gonna be stuck in this cave forever!
And the idea that Bikini Bottom would eventually be destroyed. And I get that because it kinda reminds me of that sense of dread in Majora's Mask, where the episode puts a sense of doom on Bikini Bottom. We see 1,000 years into the future to where every character we know is gone, but we also see SpongeBob's rock still doing its mysterious task of directing the jellyfish. It's kinda like staring at a vast mountain landscape. We're dwarfed by a strong sense of our own insignificance. SpongeBob, you're fired. I think the discomfort in this episode is because SpongeBob is so out of character. The bright, cheery SpongeBob we know becomes helpless for a good portion of the episode, purely because he loses fry cook job. And I don't know about you, but I like to think Spongy has more to him than being a fry cook. If you think about the episode Nature Pants, he quits his job completely to go be a jellyfish. So he's certainly not incapable of a life outside his job. And finally, then there's Pets or Pests. An old friend of mine, Cohen, recommended this one. And I get it, because the worm in this episode looks eerily realistic. Ugh. Like that hairy flesh color I'd expect from a real worm. Ugh, skip. And our final choice is Squid Baby. Just hearing the title of this episode makes some people uncomfortable. And that makes it the perfect episode for us to discuss. Squid Baby touches on the subject of head trauma, to the point of causing a forced regression in Squidward. So Spongy and Patrick have to take care of him. It's pretty straightforward in its story, really. It's similar to what was done in the episode Breath of Fresh Squidward. But that episode felt ridiculous enough that it was kinda hard to take seriously. You know, it's funny because technically the two episodes have the same concept, but I've never heard someone complain about Breath of Fresh Squidward. I think this is because in Squid Baby, the concept is presented in a more brutal way. In Breath of Fresh Squidward, Squiddy's injury didn't make him helpless to the point where SpongeBob and Patrick had to look after him. And a bit like in the early season episode Jellyfishing, it's uncomfortable because the two aren't very good at even taking care of Squidward. You know, while researching this episode, I noticed in 1960s shows like The Flintstones, the subject of a character getting a head trauma that causes them to regress or change in personality was much more common.
He thinks he's a kid again.
Yeah, you better get him to a doctor.
Yeah.
But nowadays, we don't tend to see this cliche anymore. In the Simpsons episode Bart's New Friend, we do see Homer regress to around 10 years old, but certainly not to 1 like Squidward here. And Homer's regression didn't happen due to massive head trauma. I tried to think, why is this trope not common in cartoons anymore? Why is it so uncomfortable for so many people? And I think it's partially because in modern society, head traumas are taken very, very seriously. Boxers can often get head trauma and it can be terrifying. The concept is also pretty wacky though, because I don't see many boxers getting head injuries and suddenly acting younger. Hell, Phineas Gage got an entire spike through his frontal lobe and he mostly acted like more of a jerk. But seeing a fully independent adult like Squidward suddenly becoming helpless due to his head trauma and needing taken care of, to most people that's understandably unsettling. And I think that's part of why many cartoons shy away from this trope nowadays. After his injury, when SpongeBob takes Squidward to the doctor, they try to tiptoe around the discomforting head trauma by calling it head boom boomitis. But no matter how you put it, it's still a severe head injury. So say we took the head trauma out of the story. Would it then be an episode we'd feel more comfortable talking about? What if Squidward was just playing around like SpongeBob and Patrick were at the beginning of the episode? Well, I really doubt Squidward would ever do that in his normal mind, but I do remember Jem discussing this in his review of the episode. There are some people who are into these behaviors for enjoyment, in something called age play.
Do you want to get down?
Yeah.
A similar example might be someone playing as a pony or a wolf for fun. I remember one commenter pointed out actually an example of age play in Peppa Pig, as Daddy calls his wife Mummy Pig, and vice versa. I hadn't thought of it that way, but it honestly makes the show even funnier. And obviously, some of the Sonic community has just been there, done that, got the t-shirt. Anyway, I don't tend to discuss this episode because I notice the act of shaming tends to happen whenever this particular episode comes up in discussion. But just like we'd accept in the 50 Shades community, if it's all consensual, I don't like seeing people shamed for who they are. Just as none of us should ever be shamed for liking cartoons or like Thomas the Tank Engine or video games or SpongeBob. All that stuff aside, Squid Baby is just a mediocre episode with a bunch of weak jokes. And even though I don't shame them, whatever the team was going through, this private stuff probably should have been kept private. So I think many of us skip it for that reason as well. When I rewatch this episode nowadays, you know what I noticed the most? I really respected SpongeBob for never hesitating in helping and taking care of Squidward in every way possible. Even in the toughest of times for Squidward, SpongeBob was there for him. Based on later episodes, he even seemed to enjoy it a bit.
In my imagination, you're a helpless little baby. Gee, you're sicker than I thought.
No, I'm not shipping Squidward and SpongeBob. Let's move on. With that all said, this video is all about sharing our own personal experiences with the show. So if there are any other particular episodes you tend to skip, I'd love to hear about them in the comments. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Today I'm going to say hello, and of course thank you to my patrons and members. And I'll say hello in 23 different languages to each of my shout-out patrons. Bonjour, Anna Jones, that's French, obviously. Hola to John Bondi, that's Spanish. Overwatch Dora, of course, is Spanish. How to pronounce hello in Russian. Privyet, Ostismic, that's Russian. Ni hao, Angel Angeline, that's Chinese. Ciao, 3Kate, that's Italian. Konnichiwa, Fractor, that's Japanese. Konnichiwa, Konbanwa, and Ohayo. Guten Tag, Katie, and Guten Tag, Dalton, that's German. Hola, the Furry of Fury, that's Portuguese. Annyeonghaseyo, Miss Arceus, that's Korean. Assalamu alaikum, Joseph Bowers, that's Arabic. Good Dog, Jordan McCann, that's Danish. Chandler Amethyst, Shikamu, or Hujambo, that's Swahili. Goidendag, Megan Bruns, that's Dutch. Yasso, the Hug Wizard, or Yassas, that's Greek. Dzień dobry, Rain Graves, that's Polish. Satin Yoshi, Selamat Siang, that's Indonesian. Namaste, William Johnson, or Namaskar, that's Hindi from India. Godag Urdasan, or Hey, that's Norwegian. Merhaba, Indiecore 2, that's Turkish. Shalom, Joe Ferry, that's Hebrew. Godak, Mewtwo Shadow FNAF Girl, apparently that's not just Norwegian but also Swedish. Aloha, Checkit Omega, that's Hawaiian. Kumostar Golden Soul, that's Filipino. And Jinxiao, Hanpan, that's Vietnamese. To all my bosses, thank you for keeping me here. Appreciate you.